I'm going to say a sentence with 4 different types of intonation. Which one sounds the most confident and professional? I run a very successful business. 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 In the first sentence, the intonation rises towards the end, like this. I run a very successful business. Intonation is all about how our tone rises or falls. And this type of rising intonation is often used nowadays by young native speakers, sometimes called uptalk or upspeak, and it is used in some regions where English is a native language, although not the majority. But there is a problem when using rising intonation to try to appear confident in what you're saying, because this type of intonation is often used to show uncertainty. So in many regions, if I say, I run a very successful business, what I really mean is I'm unsure about what I'm saying. Do I really run a very successful business? Using this kind of intonation actually indicates that you're turning your statement into a question. There's more information that's needed to confirm whether this statement is true or not. There is one more use of this rising intonation, and that is to prepare for the next statement. It indicates to the listener, I have not finished yet. I have more to say. Now, for these reasons, rising intonation is not a good way to show confidence when making statements. That is, unless you make another statement with the correct confident intonation immediately afterwards. In sentence 2, the intonation was flat. I run a very successful business. The tone doesn't rise or fall. English speakers normally use varied intonation to show interest and engagement with what they're saying. And because of that, flat intonation, as in this example sentence, makes you sound like a robot, or like you're saying words without thinking. In English, we need that variation of intonation up and down to show a connection between what you're saying and your own thoughts and feelings. So the result is that it doesn't sound very confident. In the third sentence, my intonation went up for just one word. I run a very successful business. Here I've emphasised the word very by going up with my tone. And this is called highlighting, which is when we emphasise the most important word by going up. For some reason, I needed to communicate the word very in a more important way than all of the other words. Not just successful, it's very successful. So very is emphasised. Now, because of this, sometimes this form of highlighting can show confidence because you're trying to emphasise something in particular and make an impression upon your listener. However, because it doesn't emphasise the whole statement, it isn't always the best way. What we want here is to show confidence in everything we're saying, not just one word, not just one aspect. We want the listener to go away feeling confident about everything that we've said. And that leads us into sentence 4. And this is where intonation is falling. I run a very successful business. I run a very successful business. See how the tone falls through the sentence. Falling intonation indicates certainty. I'm certain about what I'm saying. I know that this is true. I run a very successful business. I want you to understand I'm certain about this. Falling intonation indicates certainty. It also indicates authority. I have the right to say this. I have the power to say this. And it also tells the listener that there is nothing else to say. Finality. I run a very successful business, and that's it. Nothing more to say, because I've shown that through my falling intonation. And for these reasons, therefore, this is the best intonation pattern for showing confidence and appearing professional. So if you want to appear confident when you're speaking English, if you want to appear professional when you're speaking English, you need to master this falling intonation for statements, particularly when you are involved in business or in interviews, or if you're trying to convince perhaps a teacher or a lecturer that you know what you're talking about. The words are not enough in English. You have to use this falling intonation. Other patterns of intonation may work sometimes or may not work, but using falling intonation always works. So how do you do it? Say the sentence like this. First of all, the first stressed sound has a high tone. Now, the first stressed sound in this sentence is run because it's what we call a content word. Content words are the verbs, the adjectives, the nouns, the adverbs, any words that have real meaning in themselves. Run describes an activity, so it has real meaning. Whereas the next word, well, it doesn't actually mean anything. It just connects one word to another. I, the pronoun, sometimes has stress on it, sometimes doesn't, because it's actually a replacement word for something else. So the first stress sound here is run. And we take a high tone. We rise high on this first stressed sound. Then there is a general fall in tone between the start and the end of the sentence. And this is on the stressed sounds. So the stressed sounds here are run, very, and successful. Between these stressed sounds, we have a fall in our intonation. I run a very successful. I run a very successful. This is the general pattern. We might mix in some highlighting as well to bring particular emphasis to a word, but in general, we will fall like this. And then on the last sound, we fall in tone more sharply than the others. I run a very successful business. Business. See how there's a sharp drop on the final sound. And that's one important lesson on intonation, but my course, Advanced English Speaking and Pronunciation, has over 20 different lessons on intonation that you need to learn and understand and use if you are going to speak English in the correct way in every situation. The words, of course, are necessary to transmit meaning, but intonation also transmits more meaning. So you need to understand this as well. And this course covers a whole range of different English speaking features.